They say the devil doesn't always come with horns and fire. Sometimes he wears pearls, bakes pies, and greets you with a warm laugh. Her name was Nanny Doss, but the world would remember her by another name, the Giggling Granny. A nickname so deceptively innocent that it almost feels wrong to say it out loud once you know the truth. She wasn't a villain in a horror movie or a shadow in the night. She was a soft-spoken grandmother who loved romance novels, laughter, and, as it turned out, arsenic. But what makes a woman like Nanny Doss smile through confessions of murder? What drives someone to lace love with death and find joy in watching it fade away? It's a journey into the psychology of manipulation, obsession, and the human mind twisted by unmet love. A case so disturbing that even today, criminal psychologists still shudder when they talk about her. Nanny was born in 1905, in the deep rural South, a place where the soil was red, the air was heavy, and rules were written by the fathers who ruled their homes like kingdoms. Her father was one of those men, controlling, cold, emotionally absent. He locked her away from the world, forbidding her from wearing makeup, attending parties, or even smiling at boys. To him, emotions were a weakness. That's where the first fracture began. When you grow up being punished for wanting love, the craving for it doesn't disappear. It just mutates. And for Nanny, it turned into obsession. Stories of perfect men, perfect kisses, perfect promises, every word a fantasy, every page a portal. Those stories became her gospel, her guide to what love should be. So when she married for the first time at 16, she believed her story had finally begun. A sweet young bride holding on to hope like it was oxygen. But real life had other plans. Her husband was cruel, unfaithful, and drunk more often than he was sober. He broke the illusion, and with it, something broke inside her too. Years later, she would claim her first husband drove her to madness. But psychologists see something else, a woman beginning to equate disappointment with death. When people failed her, when love failed her, she didn't cry, she didn't scream, she erased. And that's how her quiet reign of terror began. In the years that followed, husbands, children, and family members began to die, one by one. Each death so quiet, so peaceful that no one suspected the smiling woman pouring tea by their bedside. They said she had the touch of an angel, always caring for the sick, always there at the end. But behind that tender image was a pattern, the tea she brewed, the pie she baked, the meals she cooked. Each was laced with arsenic, her silent companion. Her victims died slowly, with symptoms that mimicked illness, and Nanny, with her gentle voice, would grieve over them all. Every funeral was another performance. Every tear was an act. And every smile, that smile, hid another secret buried in the ground. But what's most chilling about Nanny Doss isn't the number of people she killed. It's the way she felt about it. She didn't kill for money or rage or passion. After a lifetime of being told what to do, she had finally learned how to decide who stayed in her story and who didn't. That sense of control, psychologists say, became addictive. Each successful murder reinforced the illusion that she wasn't a victim anymore. She was the author now, rewriting her life one obituary at a time. And through it all, she giggled. She laughed at crime scenes. She smiled through interrogations. Even her mugshot carried that faint, knowing grin, the kind of smile that crawls under your skin and never leaves. By the time she reached her 40s, she had become a master manipulator. She placed ads in Lonely Hearts columns, the early version of online dating, promising romance to grieving men who had lost their wives. Her letters were charming, playful, perfectly written. Every word crafted to disarm suspicion and ignite hope. And soon, men began to fall for her. They sent her money. Then invitations, then wedding rings, and one by one, they died. Each man thought he had found a loving companion, a gentle wife. But behind the laughter, Nanny had already chosen their ending. She would cook their favorite meal, pour them a drink, and watch them slip away, quietly, gracefully, completely. And afterward, she would giggle. That sound became her signature, the eerie echo that haunted every confession she ever gave. When police finally caught up to her, it wasn't because of her past. It was because of her last husband, Samuel Doss, a man who loved her sincerely, who wanted nothing more than a peaceful life. But peace was never enough for Nanny. When he refused to let her read her beloved romance magazines, she poisoned him too. But this time, doctors noticed the traces of arsenic in his system, and suspicions began to grow. When investigators searched her home, they found arsenic hidden in her kitchen. When they exhumed her previous husbands, the results were undeniable. She had been killing for years, maybe decades, without a trace of remorse. When they confronted her, she smiled sweetly and said, "Yes, honey, I killed them all." Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a guilty laugh. A genuine, joyful laugh, like she was telling a joke only she understood. Psychologists who studied her later described her as one of the most emotionally detached killers in American history. Unlike the typical profile of rage-driven or power-hungry murderers, Nanny operated from a delusional blend of romantic fantasy and moral justification. She believed she was fixing her life, not destroying it. She saw her victims not as people, but as disappointments to be erased. That's the real horror of Nanny Doss. She didn't kill because she hated them. She killed because they failed to match the fantasies she carried in her mind since childhood. In her world, love had to be perfect, and when it wasn't, she ended the story. During her interrogations, reporters couldn't believe how polite and cheerful she was. She complimented their clothes. She cracked jokes. She asked for coffee. And when she confessed to killing her mother, her sisters, her husbands, and even her own children, she smiled, as if she were sharing fond memories. When asked why she did it, she said, "They never treated me right. They made me unhappy." That laugh echoed across every newspaper headline in the country. The giggling granny confesses to serial murders. The psychology behind her laughter, experts say, was a defense mechanism, an emotional shield. By turning horror into humor, she neutralized guilt. The laughter made the killings feel ordinary. Because when evil stops feeling evil, there's nothing left to stop it. In 1955, Nanny Doss was sentenced to life in prison. Even in her cell, she was cheerful, chatting with guards, sharing recipes, even flirting with reporters. She called prison her home sweet home. And when she died in 1965, she left behind no letters of remorse, no explanations, just that same smile. To this day, criminologists study her as an example of female psychopathy masked by maternal charm. Her ability to blend into normal life, to hide poison behind pies, laughter behind lies, remains one of the most haunting psychological contradictions in true crime history. She wasn't the kind of killer you'd spot in a crowd. The one who'd serve you dessert and ask if you'd like seconds. Nanny Doss's story reveals the devastating intersection of repression, fantasy, and emotional disconnection. When love becomes obsession and obsession becomes control, morality collapses. Her laughter was not joy, it was detachment. She represents the chilling truth that not all killers are driven by anger. Some are driven by disappointment. So next time you hear someone laugh softly in a quiet room, remember Nanny Doss? Remember the woman who turned love into murder and laughter into a weapon. Because the scariest monsters aren't the ones who scream in the dark.